this and then we'll start. Tom, we've got 12 minutes. Hello. Hey, good to see you again too. That's a bit optimistic height-wise. That's going to hide Roz's head.
I'll get the exercise.
I'll just stand on 10 toes.
Hey. There you go. Oh, that's ours. It's okay. Got rid of that one. Audio level, David Crisafulli with Ros Bates, testing 1, 2, 3. Gord, are we good to go? Well, good morning everybody and welcome to a Queensland Health Crisis Town Hall live from Townsville. This is our 30th that Ros and I have done right across the state. And when you pull it all together and you stitch this pattern, you see a picture of a failing health service, 8 years of deterioration, and a system where doctors and nurses and paramedics are reaching out to us, where patients are reaching out to us, and we are continuing to listen to their concerns. And that's what you'll hear today, a room full of brave people who are prepared to stand up and tell their stories where they have fallen through the cracks. And in all of these, we've been able to get wins. In every one of these, we have been able to have somebody who's been stuck on a long wait list for a surgery. We've been able to get them that life-changing surgery, and that is very, very satisfying. We've also been able to shine a light on a broken system, and by doing it, we will continue to show Queenslanders we are serious about fixing the health system. And as a result of these town halls, we've been able to put forward solutions, and the LNP solutions are as follows: better resources, better triaging, sharing data in real time, but above all putting doctors and nurses back in charge. And nowhere is that more relevant than in a regional centre like Townsville, where the hospital here have the solutions to fix the health crisis. They have the solutions to stop the ballooning waiting lists. They just need to be unshackled to be able to do their job. And we will continue to fight for them because this matters. It matters to Queenslanders, because when an AMBO is stuck at the end of the ramp, at the end of a phone line is a Queenslander who can't get the service they deserve. Over to you, Ros.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Ros Bates, Shadow Minister for Health and Ambulance Services and registered nurse. Well, Queenslanders deserve a world-class health system no matter where they live. And make no mistake, Queensland Health was in trouble long before COVID. We have the worst ambulance ramping in the nation. Let me repeat that. Queensland has the worst ambulance ramping in the nation at 41%. We know that the Palaszczuk Labor government is in chaos. We know that their chaotic methods of trying to change the way data is reported in Queensland Health means that they're not telling Queenslanders the truth. You need to know exactly what's happening in our hospitals, and the only way that we find those out is through RTIs or media chasing the minister down for answers. Queenslanders deserve to know exactly what's going on in their hospital, and here in Townsville we know the wait lists are getting longer and longer. There are currently 3,000 patients waiting clinically longer than recommended timeframes for surgery. There are 18,000 patients here in Townsville who can't even get to see a specialist to have their surgery. Anastasia Palaszczuk runs a chaotic government. Queensland Health is in crisis, and if Anastasia Palaszczuk got off the red carpet and wasn't checked out, then things might be different. Yvette D'Arth is a fraud, a phony and a failure as a health minister, and if Anastasia Palaszczuk wasn't the weakest premier in Queensland history, she would have got rid of the worst Queensland health minister in Yvette D'Arth months ago. David?
Thank you. I might just make a quick comment regarding the housing issue we've seen today, particularly relating to failed promises in Redcliffe and Chermside, and this is deeply troubling at a time when Queenslanders have never been under more pressure to keep a roof under their head. To know that another commitment has been broken, that's troubling, and it's something that we're going to keep fighting for. Big announcements, but no follow through, and It's a pattern that we're starting to see emerge, and it's a pattern that Queenslanders aren't comfortable with. What we have here is a situation where a promise was made to deliver more than 100 homes, and that promise isn't going to be met. So a vacant promise, a vacant block of land, and we're going to fight for Queenslanders, because the chaos that's unfolding at the moment means that Queenslanders are living on the streets and working Queenslanders are struggling to keep a roof over their head. And we're not comfortable with that in a modern Queensland. Over to you.
David, you've been campaigning on these 4 solutions. This is your 30th town hall now. Can you just run us through, in that frame of time, what kind of response you've had from the government in regards to that?
Well, there's no doubt that the government is feeling the pressure on this, and that's because of people like this behind us. People are prepared to stand up and tell their story. And again, last night, scenes of chaos in emergency departments across the state. And I woke this morning to a text message from a whistleblower of ambos ramped at another hospital. Again. And that's not the fault of the ambo, I can promise you. It's not the fault of the doctor and the nurse inside. It's the fault of 8 years of poor planning. And we're going to keep fighting. And our solutions, some of them could be implemented immediately. Now, admittedly, better resources is something that's going to take partnerships, and it's going to, we need to convince Canberra for that 50-50 funding, and we need to make sure that those resources hit the front line. But 3 of our solutions could be implemented immediately. Sharing data in real time, we have that data. It sits on the Ambulance Commissioner's desk, but somehow Queenslanders aren't entitled to see that under the current regime. When we talk about better triaging, it's things that Ros has been speaking about, and the need to get the flow running through the ED in a better manner. That could happen immediately by having clinical initiative nurses on the front line. And when we talk about putting doctors and nurses in charge, that's a cultural shift that needs to occur immediately. And I will back a local doctor and nurse at the Townsville Hospital over someone pushing a pen in the Minister's office every day of the week. And that's the change we're fighting for.
The government continues to say the system is under pressure because of COVID. What do you make of that?
Well, that's troubling, because for 8 years, Queensland Health has deteriorated year on year. And the government can blame patients, they can blame paramedics, they can blame COVID, Canberra. In the end, they've got to look in the mirror, because it's been 8 years. And it's been 8 years of the government not listening. It's been 8 years of Queenslanders falling through the cracks, and we are going to keep fighting for them. Service delivery matters. And when this government came to office, ambulance ramping was at 15%. Today it's at 41%. That is the worst in the nation. And as a proud Queenslander, that doesn't sit well with me. And I can tell you it doesn't sit well with the ambos who are sitting at the end of the ramp, and it doesn't sit well with the doctors and nurses who are scrambling to hold a system together that has been 8 years of decline. So don't buy the rhetoric that it's always someone else's fault. Good governments plan, deliver and evaluate. Good governments listen to solutions and they accept responsibility. This one has been in office a decade at the time of the next election, and after not being able to do anything other than destroy frontline services, they'll want another term, another 4 years. I think Queenslanders are starting to realise that time is running out for them. We keep saying to them that this matters, and we keep putting forward the solutions, and yet the government finds it to be everyone else's fault other than them. And I'm not going to throw personal barbs. I just want them to listen to the solutions that are coming from forums like this.
We know from leaked reports that the maternal fetal medicine unit here in Townsville has been understaffed and under pressure. What's your understanding of where things are at there?
Well, and congratulations to the ABC on the story too. I'll get Ros to make some comments, but I'll just make this point. The Townsville Hospital holds such an important part of services that need to be delivered for regional Queensland. There are hundreds of thousands of Queenslanders who rely on it, not just people who live in Townsville, but the communities around, and indeed for some of those services, including the likes of Cairns and Mackay. If services of that nature are failing in Townsville, they are failing for everyone outside the southeast corner of the state, and that needs to be rectified, and it needs to be rectified quickly. Did you want to say something, Ros?
Sure. David and I both visited the Townsville Hospital last 2 weeks ago, and I also visited the Mater Private, and they are trying to work together. In fact, they would actually like to be unshackled from Brisbane to be able to work more closely together. The unit certainly has been under pressure, but as we know, obstetrics is under pressure here in Queensland. We need to make sure that we are valuing the people that we've got, make sure the culture is changed so that those staff, especially those specialty staff, actually want to stay here and they've got the resources behind them to support it. It's not good enough for the Minister to buck pass everything back to the HHS. She is the Minister for Health. The buck stops with her, and she can give directions to make sure that those services are at their very best. All we see when we're down in Brisbane that you don't see is that it's buck passing back to the HHSs. It's never the Minister's fault. It's never the Director General's fault. It's always the HHS. Those HHSs were put in to make sure that you had the services that you require locally, but it's up to the Minister to make sure that actually occurs.
Just on ambulance ramping, the ambulance union says ramping is working on Monday because beds aren't being freed up on weekends and people can't get to GPs. How could the government solve this?
Well, the first thing you could do is make sure that the consultants actually clear the beds on a Friday afternoon so that you had beds available for Mondays. Mondays historically has always been the busiest time for the ambulance service, but these days, if you ask the paramedics, it's every day. It's not just Monday. And I have been on ride-alongs on a Monday when it's been incredibly busy and other Mondays where it hasn't been. But we need to make sure that those resources are there for the paramedics. They can't offload their patients if there is no room at the inn. If the ED is blocked because there's no beds in the hospital for the patients to go to, you need to free up those beds. I am a nurse. I have been a hospital administrator. You free the beds up. You actually make sure the consultants discharge in a timely fashion and don't wait for them to come in on Monday morning when you have no beds for a patient to go to.
The Health Minister's in Rocky today announcing a refurbishment of an ambulance station. Do you think this is a distraction from the real issues that are plaguing the health sector?
Well, I'd like to see the Health Minister do something about the ambulance ramping in Rockhampton, which is about 38%. The last time I was in Rockhampton, which was only a couple of months ago, ambulance ramping was well up there in the high 30s, early 40s. And in fact, the day I was there were more paramedics inside that ED and more ambulances on the ramp than there were doctors and nurses. It is a system under pressure and has been for a very long time. And don't blame my colleagues on the front line. The nurses, the doctors and the paramedics are doing everything they possibly can. They have got a minister who has not listened. They've had a government that has had 8 years to fix the health crisis, and now they want another 7 years. It's not good enough, and as mentioned before, my colleagues are absolutely crumbling. They were doing triple shifts before COVID. Nothing has changed for them, and you are seeing decades of experience now walking out the door of ED departments, including my own family members.
And then we might have to get going, if that's okay. Thank you.
Last year, the opposition called the government's housing investment fund a farce. What do you think of it now?
Well, Tim Mander asked a question in Parliament the other day, which I thought was a pretty good one, and that was how many Queenslanders are sleeping under the roof of a house or a unit built under the Housing Investment Fund. There was no answer. Now, we suspect that the answer is still zero. Big dollars and big promises don't put roofs over people's heads. Attention to detail, ministers being held accountable and a government being compassionate does. And we're not seeing that at the moment. We want to see not announcements, we want to see delivery. We want to see Queenslanders given an opportunity. Because at the moment, by failing to deliver social housing, we are putting pressure on the most vulnerable. That's then creating a feeding frenzy, particularly at the bottom end of the market. And young kids aren't able to buy their first home. People are struggling to rent. And these are working Queenslanders. I have met working Queenslanders living out of a car and a tent. That's not the Queensland that we deserve to see.
And police numbers in the far north as well. But,
yep.
Mark Ryan has accused you of lying about the police numbers there. What's your response to that?
The figures have come from a brave whistleblower, and it's time for the government to listen to those whistleblowers.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. Happy New Year, Ross.